How's your day?
Long, but that's kind of part of the gig. So
Yeah, I
yeah,
see your
yours?
it's been
Hmm.
good. Mine's been good. I see your Lost Symphony behind you
Oh
though.
yeah, that's
Like,
one of
oh,
the
okay.
the other two are up there, and then some of the other projects I've worked on are hung up around my apartment. So
Nice.
yeah,
Um, did I just see it was 3 years since
it was
the
three
first
years since chapter three, I
three?
believe,
Right.
because we originally launched, I believe it was 2020, with chapters one and chapter two wasn't too long after that.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I talked to Kelly about this before,
Mhm.
and I know that I there wasn't at that point a super definitive answer. And I know obviously that's, as far as I understand, all you have with Ollie. But is there
Mhm.
still some possibility of some albums moving forward, obviously without him?
As far as I know, they're still working on some new material.
Cool.
Um, and from basically the few talks that I've had, they're kind of pivoting more towards like a core group, whereas with the first three, we had a bunch of guest musicians, me being included. So I played on a good chunk of all three. So chapters one through three there, at least 3 to 4 songs per album. So
Yeah, you were
yeah.
on, yeah, a lot of them. So they're not going to have guest musicians
So
anymore,
I
or
believe they're going to have some guests, but it's not going to be. That was kind of the whole pull with the original three was, getting those big names like again guys like Ollie, Angel Vivaldi, Jeff Loomis, Bumblefoot, Satchel, all those guys. I mean,
pretty
Angel,
big
yeah,
names.
there's just a lot of big
Oleg,
names on that. Especially, I mean, how could I even forget Marty Friedman, which
yeah.
was, yeah, that was a big moment for me being able to share a couple tracks with him. So.
And Nuno Betancourt. Yeah, you guys had
And
some,
Nuno. And
yeah,
Nuno.
you had some
Yeah.
big names.
The list keeps going. That's why if I forget anybody, I apologize.
Oh, there were
But
so many. Yeah,
yeah.
so many. So Friedman was the one that you were the most excited to work with?
Well, overall, it was Ollie because he was literally a childhood hero of mine. I had his instructional DVD. I wrote a paper on him when I was in college.
Oh,
And then when I had first started with this whole project, they were telling me that he was involved, and I was like, "Oh, that's awesome." Until one day, this is years ago now, probably 8, 9. I think we're going on like 10 years since it started because we had started recording all this stuff long before anything was ever released.
right.
Um, but it was one day I had come home or not home from work. I had gotten out of work, basically showed up at Speakeasy Studios, just walked downstairs and he was just there tracking and I was, blown away. I'm like, oh, this is happening in real life.
Real
I'm not
time.
just watching clips on YouTube of, my hero just composing stuff. I was watching him in real time, coming up with these ideas, and most of which ended up on all three chapters, which was awesome. So, um, yeah, Ollie was probably the biggest for me on there. Again, Marty Friedman was another one where, we all grew up listening to Megadeth and, you know, when it came time and I got the word that, hey, you're going to be playing on a track with them, I was like, oh, I should probably step it up a little bit. I mean, with so much of this, it was very much improvisation.
Mhm.
Because I would get that call last minute because I was one of the few guys that was local. So they would be like, hey, can you come down and play on this track? And I would have some like kind of semi-composed ideas. Um, and then we would just kind of wing it from there. There's a lot that I'm super proud of all the stuff I put on these albums, but there's a lot that from where I started to where I am now, I would love to go back and maybe touch up a little bit, I think would be a better term. But yeah, it was a super fun process and getting to talk with a lot of these guys and meet a lot of heroes of mine was something that if you told 16-year-old me that it was going to happen, I would have been like, get lost. There's no way. Um, but yeah, honestly, the whole thing was great. And anything going forward, I'm looking forward to hearing some of the stuff that they've put together. I've heard some snippets so far. So anybody that is a fan that's, been highly anticipating this next releases, you guys are in for a treat. So
That's awesome. That's
yeah.
awesome. So how did you get involved? I mean, obviously I want to venture over to your solo stuff too, but how did you
Yeah,
get
yeah.
involved with that project with Lost
So it,
Symphony?
Yeah, with all of it, I'd been doing session work for years at that point. And a buddy of mine was recording over at Speakeasy Studios for his band at the time, One Short Breath. Um, which was so that was Donnie that I was friends with, Donnie Hayes, still a good friend. Um, and basically he kept hyping me up to Benny Goodman, who's the one who basically put everything together in the first place. Um, and Benny for the longest time was just like, we got all these dudes, like we don't need your friend. It's fine. He's probably some local kid, whatever. And then Donnie had invited me down to one of their tracking nights. I think it was a Tuesdays, usually Tuesdays. And I had just gone down and there were just guitars all throughout like the kind of like lobby area. So I just picked one up and we all just started playing and Benny was just like, who's this guy? And so it was, I think like a week after that, they invited me back down. They're like, hey, come and just jam with our band for a little bit. And, I picked up the song that they were playing pretty quick because that's kind of what I have to do for most gigs anyway.
Yeah.
So, um, unofficially, Benny was like, so you're joining our band. And also I have this project I'm working on. I'd like you to take a look at it. And one thing led to another. And then, fast forward to again, me getting out of work and playing with Ollie and all those guys. So
So
yeah.
cool. My son's 16 right now. I you probably already know that. But he's a huge Megadeth fan and plays
Hmm.
a lot of Megadeth songs. And he's trying to work on building up a band right now, but we're in a small town in Idaho that does not love metal. So he's having a hard time finding people that want to play with
Yeah.
him.
Well, he's
But
16 too. It's always tough, especially where I've seen some of the videos you posted of, him shredding and doing his thing. And even just the progress he's made, which is awesome. And there's a lot of kids, especially at 16, they, they'll like it or they'll play it, but they don't have the drive or the dedication
yeah.
to it.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that's where, you run into most problems. So just let them know, keep pushing. You will
Yeah.
find people.
Yeah.
Um, but just as of right now, the one thing I'd say is just keep honing in on your craft. I mean, the more you practice, the better you're going to get. I mean, everybody knows that, but I sacrificed pretty much having a social life all the way from high school up until college. And I was like, I'll make friends later.
Right.
Um, yeah, it was fine. So,
My
going
guitars are my
home from,
friends.
yeah, exactly. Coming home and just, doing my homework and then practicing for like 4 to 6 hours until either falling asleep or being told to stop playing by my folks. Um, it obviously paid off in the long run, but if he keeps pushing, no reason he's not going to be able to find some people. They'll come to him at that point. That's
Yeah.
kind of what I've seen.
True. So what
Yeah.
age did you start playing? You said high school is probably when you really got super serious, but how long have you been
Yeah.
playing?
So I started in middle school. I think it was like seventh grade. It's probably like, what was that, like 10, 11, maybe
Yeah.
12.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it was around middle school age. Um, I got a beat up acoustic from one of my aunts and the action on it was like this high off of the fretboard.
Oh,
So,
geez.
you develop, I mean, as you could probably see,
Your fingers are like bleeding already.
I've got meaty hands. So luckily, it was fine, but you really start to build up that you build the calluses, you start to develop and it becomes muscle memory real quick. So, um, yeah, it was around, I want to say like 11. I started getting into it. And then by the time I actually got to high school, I was fully nerded out and just again, that's all I really cared about. I would be, doing my schoolwork and then in between I would be, working on whether it was notation, whatever it was. I'm still figuring all that out because I was
Yeah.
mostly self-taught.
Yeah.
Um,
Jeez.
so
Jeez.
by the time I got to college too, college I actually went for music and I was the one kid there. Everyone else was, they could read music and they could sight read, do all that stuff. Meanwhile, I'm picking it up by ear because that's how I learned.
Right.
And, a lot of professors were just like, you've got the chops, you know what you're doing, but you have no names for any of these things. So,
Right.
that all came later.
So was that tough to learn that already knowing kind of what you were doing, even though you didn't have names for it? Did you feel like you had to like relearn some stuff?
It was lucky for me with guitar being my primary instrument. It was the only difficult thing with relearning was when it came to like piano voicings and stuff like
Oh,
that, because that's what they would kind of focus on.
mm-hmm.
Um, but and I say that and I can barely play piano anymore. So
Oh,
that's
I
it
was
is what
gonna
it
say
just
that
as far as
surprises me.
arranging goes, when I do like compositions for clients and stuff, I can, peck everything out, but it's not really my strong suit, we'll say. But yeah, to answer the question, I had everything in my hands. It just was basically giving names to it. So it wasn't too big of a transition. It actually was super helpful because now I was able to verbalize when I was doing more, because I had started doing the session work like when I was basically like just out of high school. Um, and it's fine when you're dealing with someone's blues band and they're like, it's in E or it's in G or whatever the key, or A minor, it's whatever it is. Um, and then like, okay, I have the pentatonic shape here. I can do, X, Y, and Z. But then having actual terms when I started working with like bigger clients and doing, more intensive things, it just made me a little more well-rounded, I'd say. So yeah.
Yeah, for sure. What made you decide on the guitar?
Um, the funny thing is it started off, it's gonna sound really weird considering my background, but um it was around that time. I think it was a Switchfoot song back in the day. It was Meant to
Mm,
Live, which was super popular. I heard the riff and was just like, that's amazing. What is that? Um, I listened to Aerosmith and everything, but it was a little heavier.
hmm
So like with Zeppelin and Aerosmith and like Kiss and all those bands, the Stones, like I still love all those bands, but I was looking for something a little heavier,
hmm
and then heard that because it was in drop D, and I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. Um, so then I was just like, I got to learn how to do that. And then basically spiraled out of control from there because it was like from Switchfoot to Pantera, which is my all-time ultimate band. Like, they're the best.
That's where
Despite
Hendrix is at now.
good, good. Just so you know, he's not going to grow out of it.
No, I don't. Hey, I am
It's good.
almost 42 and I haven't grown out of it. So,
Yeah. So there's nothing to worry about there. Um, but yeah, it was bands like Pantera, Megadeth, Metallica, um, obviously like the big four with Anthrax and all them. I was never really huge on Slayer. Didn't Wasn't that I disliked them. They just didn't kind of hit that for me as far as the guitar
mhm.
work went. But
Yeah, I was the same.
yeah, and then basically gravitating from that to finding Killswitch Engage, All
Mhm.
That Remains, bands like that, like the metalcore, the New England metalcore, at least,
Mhm.
because I mean that's where I'm from. Um,
Right. And
so
that
yeah,
was the good stuff. I mean, they were big. They are big.
they still are, and it's
Yeah,
it's it's
both
one of the
bands.
things with them too. They kind of blended the two elements of, all right, you have the heavy guitars, the melodic hooks, so there's vocals that you can sing back, and the choruses are huge. And then there's the screaming, which I loved as well. So it was just like, let's mash it all together, and there you go. They were basically ripping off In Flames riffs, but
Oh,
but it's okay because who doesn't love In Flames riffs?
oh my gosh, everybody. It's so funny. I do obviously a lot of interviews, and anytime we talk about other bands, which doesn't happen super often,
Hmm.
but 9 times out of 10, they're going to talk about In Flames, and that
Yeah,
I don't know why it surprised me, but it did. They're
that's
amazing.
In Flames. I feel like that In Flames, At the Gates, even bands like Soilwork, Carcass, especially. All these bands were a huge influence. When I started getting into like the melodic side of things,
Mhm.
and they could really did combine. Okay, you have these awesome riffs, guitar harmonies. You wouldn't have bands like that. The ones that most of the kids my age were getting into was like Avenged Sevenfold, and with them alone, like those guitar harmonies wouldn't be the huge thing without, again, In Flames, Iron Maiden. It all comes full circle, and
Right.
none of those bands would have been influenced if there was no Aerosmith, Rolling Stones. Like it's just
Trickle down
that's why I
effect.
love music.
Me too. Me too. Well, and then going back to just you and your solo song, that is more
Yeah.
of like a progressive, obviously instrumental because it's just you. But
Mhm.
more of like a um oh my gosh, intervals slash Flippia type of thing. You're
Yeah.
doing more of that kind of stuff.
Yes. So with all that, I've been working for other people essentially my entire musical career. So it was one of those, I finally had the time and the means to put all these songs that I've had together for a while. Um, that first song is actually, life gets in the way. So I had finished that song, I think we're going on like 2 years now. Um, it's actually part of what was 5 songs, like an
Oh,
EP with interludes and everything.
oh,
That's been since condensed down to 3, so I will have a couple more coming out hopefully later this year.
good,
Um,
good.
but with a lot of that stuff, it's funny because I hear it from friends all the time. They're like, "It sounds like intervals, like you said, or it sounds like Polyphia or Chon or any of those." There's some
It's
plenty
just the
moments.
style of, with that really progressive
Y-
instrumental sound.
Yeah, and a lot of that came from it's just what and I'm sure any of those bands, whether they want to admit it or not, some of them openly do, was just the discovery of like bands like the Fall of Troy, which were huge for me when it came to, oh, you can have all these complex riffs and then there's a melody running under it and all these little things. And, that becomes part of your vocabulary. And again, that's how I always wrote. So as soon as I had the time to like, oh, let's just flesh all these out, and a big part of that, shout out to Corey over at All Step Studios. He's the guy I record with. That includes the Lost Symphony stuff and
Oh, okay.
um, any of the other projects I've worked on. He's my go-to engineer for just about everything. Um, and also to Eric Shepard, who he's basically cut of the same cloth. He's another studio musician like myself. He does drumming for anybody that needs him, and he's fantastic. And another guy that a lot of people probably aren't too familiar with, unless you're local here, Sean O'Toole, um, absolutely monster bass player and one of the humblest dudes you'll ever meet. Um, we're definitely trying to work on him owning the fact that he's an animal on the bass. But he'll come into it eventually. Uh,
Oh.
but these guys all speak the same language. We all grew up listening to these bands and again, Fall of Troy, Between the Buried and Me, those progressive bands that were doing the metal thing, but also, had those cool guitar sections where you're like, what even just happened? Are we still in 4/4? Like, is it? And people have asked for sections of Restless, especially. They're like, is this all? It's 4/4 from start to finish.
Oh, really?
There's just a lot of syncopation in there and like offbeats to make it feel like, wait, where's the one? So you're just counting through, and then yeah, it comes back. But um, yeah, the solo stuff has been a great outlet to finally get that out there. Um, just kind of what the sound is in my head out
Mhm.
in a platform that's, not just me playing for another country artist or, doing a movie soundtrack or whatever it happens to be at the time. So yeah, it's been super fun.
Are you hoping to do more in the future then?
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Like I said, I have probably 4 or 5. Actually, now we just started a sixth. So there's all songs in various stages of completion because that's kind of how it works when you have multiple jobs and try and, balance everything. But the the bulk of it is going to be probably released, like I said, those 3 songs. So including Restless, there's 2 other tracks that should be coming out hopefully by the end of the year. And then there's actually 3 more that I'll be releasing periodically. And then from there, that was just the stuff that was written initially. And as ideas come, I like to bounce them off of both Eric, Sean, Corey, see where it goes. And, if people dig it, awesome. If not, that's fine. I wrote it for me.
So
So
is it gonna be under your name, or are you guys gonna do like a band type name?
so as of right now, it's all just under my name because I'm the one primarily writing everything.
Right.
Corey and I will basically do the bulk of the guitars, program out the drums first. Then we send them to Eric and make him cry for a little bit. Because guitar players, as most people know, write things that aren't typically possible for humans to play. So he humanizes it, makes it sound awesome and as close to what we were imagining.
Mhm.
And then Sean usually comes in and him and I will meet up periodically throughout the year and just kind of chug away through ideas and, all right, which sections to lock in with? What are we, what are the parts to kind of lay back, let the guitar breathe, and then, or hey, here's a bass break, go and do, 8-finger crazy tapping things. Like, so, um, yeah, I mean, with all this stuff, as of right now, it's just under my name. But once we finish these tunes, I'd love to kind of have a little more input from them because it is kind of exhausting writing progressive instrumental guitar
Oh
centric music,
gosh, I'm sure.
especially when you're self funding. So
Yeah. Oh my
yeah.
gosh. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Uh, so top five either influences as far as guitar playing or um just top five of your favorites.
Okay. These are always super hard.
They are, I know.
Um,
And I hate when people ask me these types of questions. I
but you know what?
apologize.
No, you don't have to apologize. That's kind of the beauty of the question itself, is it forces you to really think.
Mhm.
One of them goes without saying, Dimebag Darrell from Pantera. He's always been number one. As far as influence goes, it was just that kind of like reckless abandon, but also just owning the fact that you've got your chops and you just go for it. He wasn't there worrying about like, oh, is this within the scale? It doesn't matter. Does it
Right.
sound awesome? Yeah, let it rip. That was the whole thing. Um, one that so these won't be in any order, if
Okay.
that's fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would
Um,
not expect it to be. I don't think any of us
the yeah,
can
I was gonna say
when
it's
it comes
it's
to
almost
music.
impossible.
Yeah.
Yeah. One that a lot of people probably don't know too much about, and I would definitely recommend, giving him a listen, um, is Jake Sinninger from Humphreys McGee. A lot of they're one of those jam bands that actually, they not only do they rip, but they write these incredible songs. They're very progressive in what they do, leaning more towards the album side of things. But as far as the influence that he's kind of been, was his live approach. He would use the term, which I've ripped it off 100 times, but stunt guitar. So like being that like auxiliary person to, okay, yeah, the rhythm's doing their thing, and then you just come in like, bat out of hell and just let loose with just chops for days. But he did it in a really tasteful way. He's got more of like a jazz background as well, which I do as well, which is great.
Yeah.
So he was one of those guys where I'm like, oh, those are all things that I'm kind of already doing, but I love how he's piecing it together. So I would steal a lot of licks from him. Um, Weirdly enough, as far as like composing goes, one of the big guys, and some guitar players are going to agree with me, others are going to say absolutely not, but John Mayer. Um,
Yeah. I mean, he's part of
Phenomenal.
Crossroads for a reason.
Yeah, exactly. Um, Another very tasteful player, the guy that knows what he's doing. Um, but also, he knows when to lay back, whether it's a minimalist solo or if he's just ripping blues. It's always tasteful, and that's kind of the nature of what I do as a session guy. Is yeah, there's moments to open up and really let the notes take over, and then sometimes you just got to lay back on like a vocal type melody and just go from there.
Right.
Um, so what are we at, three? The other guy, and should be on everybody's list if Hendrix doesn't already know, Guthrie Govan all day.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Um, he's probably not quite on that jazz fusion cusp yet, it's coming, just a heads up. So he'll get there. But Guthrie Govan is probably like, if I want to be Guthrie Govan when I grow up. We'll put it that way. I'm 32, but when I do finally grow up, I would love to be Guthrie Govan. Um, just probably the most well-rounded player that's out there right now. There's a reason why he's playing for like Hans Zimmer, um, Steven Wilson. He's played on periphery tracks. He's played with everybody at this point. The Aristocrats, his solo thing is phenomenal. Uh, just an absolute monster player, and yeah, he has to be on this list. And now I have to think of one more, which is going to be the difficult
We
part.
could do top four.
That works. Let's go with top four.
You're like, I'm not gonna try to fill that next spot. There's 30
Yeah.
that are gonna go in that spot.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I mean, Ollie was another huge influence too, but it's a little different as far as how he kind of influenced me. It was more from, that was when I was getting super into theory,
Mm-hmm.
and really thinking modally as far as, all right, it's if we're playing this particular scale, and which I try not to get too trapped in, because I feel like it does kind of stifle creativity a bit.
For sure, yeah.
Um,
I can
but
see that.
he was brilliant in regards to composition. And before he had passed, he was working on putting together a guitar book, which I don't
Oh,
know if it's still out there, but I'd love to see that maybe released at some point. But
hopefully
yeah.
so. What are some things that you do for exercises before you're like, if when you go to have to do a big duty project or before you go to perform? Is it just like the OG scales and stuff, or do you have different things that you?
So having, my hands are not your typical guitar player hands. They're
Short.
carpenter hands. So as far as stretching out, I just, it's a lot of, before anything, just really getting the blood flow in the hands, loosening everything up, then just running a lot of like familiar scales. So your major, your minor. One of the biggest ones I do is it's a sequenced arpeggio run. It's a whole tone thing into a diminished run. Just because it's a symmetrical shape. So while the fingers are going, it's just this constant motion that really loosens up the pinky and the other fingers, which is good. I know a lot of people do that little chromatic thing where it's just all within the 4 fret boxes. That one's never really done too much for me as far as warming up goes. Um, and then once I start feeling loose enough, then just start ripping a lot of like sweeping and tapping stuff, just so I can make sure both my hands are synchronized, and yeah, I'm ready for the session.
Oh, cool. Which guitar is your favorite to play, if you can even name that? Because there's,
uh
obviously there's different ones for different purposes. So
yeah, I was gonna say my Jacksons and Charvels. Shout out to Charvel Jackson. They're fantastic. I have a Walnut DK24 Pro Mod that I've used on a ton of session work, as well as the solo stuff. So Restless was all recorded on that. But
I was
recently
wondering, I was trying to figure out what that was. I'd never
yeah,
seen that
it's
hex up
not a
before.
model. I don't think they're currently producing it anymore.
Oh, okay.
It's just the top on it was beautiful. It was one that I got to hand select.
That's cool.
And it just plays phenomenally. Every time I've given it to any of my guitar player friends, they're like, "What did you do to get this?" And I was just like, sometimes they just have like that magic. Like, I've set it up myself, but knowing that it's butter playing, the neck is perfect, everything about it is just super comfortable, and it just feels good. But yeah, it's not one that they make too much anymore. I have a couple of them. I used to have 3. I ended up selling one of them, but um, I've since kind of switched over to these Strandberg, the weird headless ones that everybody's like,
Like the ones
"What are
behind you.
those?" Yeah, actually, yeah, I got a couple here. There's probably 3 or 4 more in one of the racks over there. Um, but yeah, these guys are super fun. They're weirdly shaped.
Oh, they
Um,
are. They're like a
yeah,
BC Rich kind of body looking
yeah,
thing.
except it's super tiny.
Oh, weird. Huh.
Yeah, because you could, I mean, I don't have a huge head, but it's not that much bigger.
Right.
Um, and on top of that, these guys have these, you probably can't see it on the camera here, but it's a
Sound like a
actual,
rich.
yeah, you can kind of see this. It's
Yeah.
a asymmetrical neck. So
Oh,
it's
interesting.
geometric shaped where it's almost like a trapezoid, which forces your thumb to go exactly where it's supposed to be.
That's
So when you're playing,
crazy.
yeah, it just makes everything super comfortable. Um,
Huh.
so I started playing those, and now again I still use the Charvels and Jacksons all the time, but those ones are one of my go-tos as far as specifically that one, the natural top. Just because the ergonomics of it, you don't get the fatigue that you do get eventually with playing a conventional, C, D, or like V-shaped neck.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes
So
sense. I've never seen a neck like that. That's crazy. I didn't even know they made them like that.
yeah, it's kind of exclusive to Strandberg. They're, you know, right out of Sweden. Ola Strandberg, one of the nicest dudes ever, and a genius. So all of those, like the contours, everything about it is designed to just fit right to your body. They're
Huh.
super lightweight. That's why like guys like Pliny use them. I'm pretty sure everybody in the list that I've kind of dropped so far in this conversation has at least owned one, if not more, of those just because,
Crazy.
yeah, they're super fun.
Sweden, man, they know what they're doing when it comes to music.
They do. They really do. But those ones come at a quite a pretty penny. So
Oh,
if
I'm sure.
yeah, if Hendrix is ever looking to get into those, definitely keep an eye on the used market. They're tremendous.
See if I need both kidneys at that point, or if he does at that point,
Yeah,
probably.
I mean, listen, that's up to him. I mean, I worked odd jobs to pay for my first electric, so it builds character.
He just bought his first one last month. He went
Hmm.
back to my parents to work on the farm and made a whole bunch of money with all my family members that were having him do all this farm work. And
Hmm.
so he bought a it's not a Gibson. Oh my gosh. It's an Explorer. It's the Thunder Horse. It's Brennan Small's Thunder
Oh,
Horse
Brandon Smalls
Explorer.
from Epiphone.
Epiphone. Yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. The Gibson one was like
they
five
make great
grand or
guitars
something like that. Yeah. That was his first one because he became a huge Death Pop fan when we saw them a few months
naturally.
ago. I know. How can you
They're
not?
just super fun. I still
They
have the
are.
box set when people still bought DVDs. I still have them. So
Yeah.
yeah.
They started streaming them again on one of the streaming services. I can't remember. HBO Max, I think it was, and then they took it off again.
That's why you got to get the DVDs.
I know. Yeah. Anymore. You got to chase some of those old classics down.
Oh yeah.
What do you do outside of playing guitar, if anything? It sounds like you
Oh
play a lot.
yeah. I do I do play a ton. As far as other things, hobbies, I mean, I've been playing hockey for years.
Oh, cool.
Kind of taking a back seat on that because I was a goalie as well. So it's one of
Oh,
those you take a
oh,
lot of abuse.
yeah.
Um
Mental and
and
physical.
yeah, well, you have to be a little mental to get hit with things regularly anyway. So
Right.
um yeah,
That's
it
cool.
was
I didn't know that about you. That's really
oh
cool.
yeah. I did that for a while. I used to do locally they do like a not pay to play, but goalie for hire kind of thing because everyone's always looking for them. So I used to do that to, get a little extra cash when I was in my like early 20s. But yeah, the older I get, the more I'm like, I think I'm just gonna remember those days now. That's fine. Um, but outside of that, I actually I'm a operations team manager for a local insurance company as
Awesome.
well.
Awesome.
Um,
You are busy.
yeah, it's yeah,
That's
usually
not a
pretty
hobby
busy
though.
with that.
That's work.
It's not, yeah, I was saying, well, you asking what I do
Oh, that's true. I
outside of
didn't say
guitar, so I do that as
that.
well.
That's true.
Yeah, it's it's funny, especially being that guy where I'll occasionally have my guitar with me, especially like the Strandbergs because they're so small. I come into work with that on my back, and you get the weird looks like, what, why are you doing this? And like, I have to go to the studio after this. Um,
I was gonna
so
serenade you guys at lunch.
yeah, yeah, awkwardly just noodling at my desk on my lunch break. Which I do on occasion, but it's
Yeah,
more so just to keep my hands loose for the upcoming session.
right.
It always just reminds me of that scene in was that Mark Wahlberg Rockstar when he's fixing
I
the
haven't
printer
seen
for
it
the
in so
guy.
long. I haven't seen it for so long. Probably since it came
Definitely
out.
add it to your list. It's still great. It's a great
Is it?
movie. Yeah,
I
but
remember it being kind of depressing.
oh, it's super depressing, but it's a
Okay.
fun ride.
Yeah, I need to watch it again.
Oh yeah. But yeah, it's just there's a moment in there where he still has his eyeliner on from the night before, and his hair's in the ponytail, but he's wearing the khakis and the button-up shirt, and the guy that works with him is just staring at him like, "What are you?" That's, you know, I think they've kind of gotten past the shock phase now, especially being in management. They're just like, that's just Matt. That's what he does. Um, but yeah, I mean, outside of that, I don't really do too much. I'm a big movie guy. Music is even, when I'm not playing, you know, enveloped with anything that I can find. I'm constantly looking for new bands. Just trying to stay up to date too, doing the session thing, just finding bands that are up and coming and seeing what's getting popular as far as like when we had that one random surge of okay, every song needs a banjo in it now. Like why Mumford and Sons and all that when that was
Yeah,
like on the rise, that folk movement, and then now all of a sudden it's that 80s synth wave, which I'm 100% here for. Um, just because I feel like it ties in well with guitar music. So
yeah,
um, but like it's just staying on top of what's current and what's getting popular. But even for my own enjoyment, like there's random bands I'll find where I'm like, why do you only have like 1,000 monthly
oh my
streams
gosh.
on Spotify? It makes no sense.
Yeah, there's a lot of them out there that I feel like that. Um, did you see that Billy Howardell did a like a synth album? I think it was probably about 2 years ago now. Maybe it was last year. I feel like it was 2 years ago
What was the name of it? Do you remember? It sounds familiar, but again, with the amount of music that I'm constantly just absorbing, I probably saw it and then listened to it, and it has since been purged from my
Yeah, in
memory.
and out. Oh my gosh, I can't remember what I can see the cover. It has his face on the cover, and it's just under his name, Willie Howard on but I
Yeah,
can't remember what.
you'll have to send it to me.
Yeah, I will. It's pretty good. I mean, it's fun, so he did a fantastic job. And then
Fair
Mike
enough.
Spreitzer of Devil Driver just did a kind of industrial
I
solo
did see that, yeah.
that,
Or
which is
hear
pretty
that
awesome
rather.
too. Yeah, it's pretty awesome too. Um, well, cool. Well, thanks for taking the time with me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks
Yeah.
for, interviewing. I mean, not a ton of people are even aware of my existence. That's kind of the beauty of doing the studio thing where I get to be the faceless person in the background that makes other people sound good. So,
Is that what you prefer?
oh yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of attention. So,
No. No, that's funny
yeah,
because I always think that I always say, like, Kelly, you need to be way, way more out there because you're so incredible and so fantastic. And I think he does have more of that personality that's probably like wanting to be maybe more of the face. But
yeah.
that's funny with you that you're just like, well, I'm just gonna
Nope, I'm
hunker down
happy
in the
being behind the
background.
scenes. Yeah, that's kind of my comfort zone as far as I'm concerned. Music should be like anyone should be focused more on the actual music itself rather
Of
than the
course.
aesthetic. And I'm not the dude with the long hair, and I was a hardcore kid growing up too, so like, it's just it's not about the fame or anything. It's more
You're
so
so
just
good.
being involved in cool projects and having a good time doing it.
Yeah, good for you. All right,
Yeah.
last question. Who's your favorite hockey player slash goalie? You can do two or you can do one.
Uh, all right, so it'll be two. Jerry Cheevers will always be my number one. He's a local guy. He's the first guy with the mask design of all the stitches.
Huh.
And then Tim Thomas. So both Boston goalies, but Tim Thomas was. I took a lot from him as far as goaltending goes because he was just real reckless and had no problem dropping hands or dropping gloves with anybody. So yeah, those would be my two.
I remember, obviously it's been a long time ago, watching Mika Kiprusoff
Hmm.
in Calgary, and he just, I thought he was amazing every time.
Kipper was an animal, and the funny thing is, his gear now, people still, I'm still a part of all those goalie groups on like Facebook and everything, and they're still looking for his used gear. Like
Oh,
it's
interesting.
like a
He's like,
weird hot
he's hoarding
commodity.
it.
Yeah, everyone's just like, does anybody have the Kipper glove? I need a Kipper glove. I'm
Oh,
like,
how
oh, all
funny.
right. So yeah,
That's funny. Awesome. Well, thank you, Matt. I hope you have a really good rest of your day.
you as well. Thanks for having me.
For sure. We'll talk to you later.
Sounds good.
Bye.
Bye.